Welcome back to the on-court presentation. We are ready to start our afternoon. Our next presenter is an elite RSPA professional and has been for 34 years. He's the director of the Championship Training Academy at Glenview Tennis Club. He's the 9-time Coach of the Year, including the 2005 United States Olympic Committee Development Coach of the Year. 2017, he was elected into the Midwest Hall of Fame of the RSPA. His students have earned over $24 million in scholarships to play college tennis. His students have gone on to win over 80 USTA balls at national tournaments. His students have earned 13 WTA and ATP rankings, including 8 whom have competed in the US Open. He's been the assistant coach for the Bryan brothers on tour, which he did for 17 years. Currently the assistant coach for the US Davis Cup team. He's been a presenter at over 90 conventions and has made 5 appearances at the RSPA national as a national commentator. Please welcome Mark Bay.
Good afternoon, everyone. How am I on volume? ABC 1 2 3, 3 2 1. Hawaii with 2 eyes. Aloha, because everybody says it, right? So how could I start without a proper Hawaii beginning? Thank you guys for coming out. I know it's lunchtime. I know some people are hungry, and we'll probably fill in with a few more people afterwards. Brenda did a great job and outstanding. I can still remember being a young boy and being a ball boy for her when she was in the Virginia Slims of Chicago as a young pro, and I still have a bruise on my hand from her 127-mile-an-hour serve there. So she owes me some medical bills. No kidding, but yeah, she apparently is tied with Venus and some others for maybe second. I think Sabine Lisicki actually has the fastest serve on tour. I asked her, she gave me that fact check. I thought that was interesting, but it's great to be here. I have now gone 3 days, done a little bit of content shooting with Ramona and Company, and then we had Ask the Expert yesterday, and now a macro broad stroke discussion about junior developing from A to Z today. And hopefully if I can be judicious with the time and finish on time, maybe, who knows, I could hit you guys with a couple of fun razzle-dazzle drills or something at the end, because I know often in the industry people know me for that, where today obviously my lane is a little bit different. But I think that this discussion and Ramona pushing me into a junior developing A to Z topic was really good, because there's a bunch of you that maybe work at different parts of the alphabet in terms of making players. Getting to the point where you have players at the very end of the rainbow is not that easy, and in some cases people maybe never even achieve that in their careers. But so much and so many important decisions and work is done in the early letters, and so we want to make sure we talk about the entire journey, not just the end or only with super high performance players, and make sure that everybody here possibly has some information to fortify what you do at those early stages to give your chance, or give your players the best chance to be successful down the road. So I think as an A to Z, using that as the analogy, I would say that most of my time is spent in letters D through W. I'm going to say I'm spending the most amount of time in letters D through W. Obviously, last week coaching Davis Cup, I'm coaching XYZ players, right? The best players in the world. That's a different job for a week. But my developing hat back at home, when I'm doing full-time all the time, I'm probably not the very first coach with the 4-year-old red balls, even though I've had that experience as well. But I'd say I'm catching players there. I took a look at my students, and I tracked the median age of all the players that are on my lesson book right now, and it is 12.29. That's the median age of what I coach right now. So it gives you a little bit of a framing of who I'm working with. I've put a lot of students, 23 to be exact, in the college here in the last 3 years. So I've graduated a lot on now and going back to that younger, earlier age, and in some cases earlier letter development piece. So in terms of the daily essential product, my program is about making all court tennis players that become full-time tennis players and love the sport, and eventually create opportunities for them to play in college, and for those that have the aspiration to go beyond. So I think it's important to state that because that's where I come from, that's what I'm doing each day. And instead of just going and collecting a paycheck and getting through the time, if you really know that you have a particular product you're responsible for creating, that might give you a bit more focus and framing when you're working each day at your jobs and the clubs back at home. So I'm not John Wooden, obviously the famous basketball coach, but I do have my own pyramid of what I believe has to happen for people to be successful going through the junior space. And in this pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid is fun. That's the bottom. And then the next rung going up is desire and dreams. So I think that those are important early. You never want to squash a kid's desire or dreams. You just want to show them how to get to the yellow brick road, not tell someone they're not capable. The third is tactical instincts. And you'd say, boy, Mark, why tactical instincts third? And I feel that when you watch young children play, sometimes they're doing things that may not make sense for their size or their age at that moment, but they felt that that was the right thing to do, and they may need to get the tennis down to execute it, but it wasn't the wrong thing per se. And sometimes I think a lot of game styles and skills are squashed early on because they're not allowing the probing and the experimenting at an early age. Then I have technical foundation. And I think that that's obviously what a lot of people focus on and talk about, and it's obviously critical. But again, that's the fourth rung on this pyramid. Playing experience is next up, followed by self-evaluation. You're going, wow, self-evaluation? How's an 11-year-old going to be good at self-evaluation? Well, you develop it, you foster it, you nurture it. Last night, my phone was blowing up, and this morning I listened to the messages. My students have to reach out to me on the phone and leave messages. So if I'm Patrick Mahomes or LeBron James, after a game, I go to a press conference and I have to leave a message, right? They go to a press conference to have to deal with the media. My students have to leave me a message, which in fact is their media responsibility. They have to let me know, based on what we do and how we've been doing things, how they performed, and what types of things they did well and what types of things we need to add to maybe our lesson syllabus going forward. Responsibility, independence, accountability, those three words are one rung. And I think you have to give kids little bits of the responsibility to chew on so they learn. And hopefully they can conquer those responsibilities to get more. Independence is important in our sport because we are not able to talk to the athlete every single point. And accountability, I think, is just good for life. And then physical development is, of course, the top because sometimes athletically and physical development-wise, you have to wait a little later before you can push athletically and do a lot of things to start sculpting an athlete's body to be optimal for their sport. And then second from the top, dealing with adversity. So obviously, dealing with losing, dealing with someone cheating them, all these different types of things that go on, struggling, having, cramping up, all the different aspects that go into tennis. And then at the top is pressure performance. And we know that that's what separates the best from the best, right? When Alcaraz and Sinner are at those key moments at the match, pressure performance decides who gets the slams and gets the pieces of history. So again, that's my pyramid. It's what I believe in. And the daily essential product, again, that I'm trying to create are all court tennis players that have the ability to go on and play college tennis. So that's what I'm doing in my job. So it's important just to understand that framing as I go and delve into a lot more of these fine-tuned topics. So in the early letters of, I'm gonna call it A through K, all right? A through K, early letters. We talked about this yesterday in the Ask the Expert, how to deal with multiple sports. You want to keep the multiple sports going as long as you can without distracting and detracting from the tennis. So you want to have some of the players doing multiple sports, but understand that if they're still trying to play both of them at 14, 15, and that sport is conflicting with the tennis season, then you understand that they're probably not going to be able to, in my particular world, get to a college tennis situation. The next, from green ball to yellow. They took the colored balls away. That's too bad. I thought they were going to keep them out. I gave a talk at the US Open a few years ago about green to yellow and how quickly to develop someone and move them through that particular stage. And I think sometimes people make the mistake and think that the yellow ball is just too challenging and a new ball bounces too high. But you could take a yellow ball that's pretty dead and almost close to being able to maybe be thrown out, and you can use that effectively for someone. So it's not that a yellow ball that is brand new has to be utilized for them, and you can actually use the balls at different levels of a ball's compression life. But I think that the challenge with the balls and the Rogi progression for a lot of people is that sometimes financially it's better for the club to keep kids into the tracks longer and not have them moving through. I don't think that they should just be moving through quickly. It should be based on how they're performing and producing, and that's obviously a subjective situation with the coach. But I've found that there's some players that most certainly need to stay in those levels and some that can move quicker, and it's our job to identify who those outliers are and let them move through quicker. But I definitely feel that I use the colored balls all the time. So even though I'm an advanced coach, I will use a red ball or a green ball with an actual high performance player as I'm trying to build something and give them repetitions. Particularly, say I was going to work on some racket head speed, I might take a red ball and we might come up to the net this close and just work on elbow to wrist acceleration with a red ball right there at the net. And that's a skill right there that top players have to have that I could develop with a red ball. And so it's not that the other balls are useless or preschool or taboo. I think it's a qualified professional that needs to know how to be able to integrate these things. Loop versus straight back. These decisions, I'm going to give you some of these other tennis decisions that a lot of coaches make early. And often what happens is I get this kid at letter D or E, and someone else has made some of these decisions already, and sometimes they haven't been good decisions. And the amount of work that I have to do to undo some of the bad pre-early letter work is challenging. And so my feeling about the ready position is incredibly, I'm particular. Now, this most certainly for some will end up being a little controversial, and I try to make sure that I communicate when I'm more mainstream and when I'm more controversial to most. This is a Mark Bay, more controversial take. I believe that the non-dominant hand should not be on the grip fully, and most certainly should not be tight. So a tight top hand on the ready position, in my opinion, is going to hurt their future. They're going to be limited. They won't have natural flow and movement to the actual shots. It's not going to help the slice, not going to help the volley, not going to help the overhead, not going to help the serve, not going to help the feel. It's going to help them just do forehands and backhands, and sometimes hurt that because they're going to be really physically tight as they're holding on to it. So a light, relaxed top hand that is secure, where maybe part of the fingers are holding on to the lower part of the throat and then the other fingers are still actually on the grip, allows me at this point to make actions for forehands and for volleys and for overheads, but also as I move to the backhand, it slides down easily. It's not a difficult move to go from this to that. It's not dramatic. So I don't have to keep it on here tight and then try to make a move here where now my top hand is tight, and that's not a clean move either, even though my hand's on the grip. So some people think because the majority of the players are two-hand backhand players that they should have it there. I'm not in that opinion. So then you get the rare player, somebody like Djokovic, right, who spent a lot of time doing this, and then later in his career, right, later in Joker's career, then he started working on the slice and working on the volleys, and he started to actually be more relaxed with his top hand and moving it up. But why not start in the beginning with that? Because you have some players who may keep a lot of that tension and never get that slide and that feel, right? And then now what? They become limited. And how many times on this podcast has Andy Roddick said, if I had a better backhand, if I had a better volley? How many times? He's self-deprecating when he's doing it, but he knows that volley he missed at Wimbledon, he would have beaten Fed, and maybe his trajectory and Grand Slam numbers would be different, right? So if you're developing players and we're the ones that are seeing the masses, why not do the right things at the early ages to build it up? Because once they become very good, it's rare, right? Super rare. We talked about this last night at dinner. Like Nadal was more one-dimensional with not being an all-court player, but then he played doubles with one of his good buddies, Mark Lopez, won Indian Wells, and then started playing some more doubles with Robredo and added doubles to his actual equation, and that got him more comfortable and confident at net to the point where when Nadal won that U.S. Open and beat Kevin Anderson in the final, he was 19 of 19 at the net. Go back and look at the stat. And look at the match point. The match point was what? You saw it. Rafael Nadal's match point on Kevin Anderson in the U.S. Open. His 19th net appearance, what was it? A serve and volley out wide. Lefty slice serve out wide, come in, backhand volley to the open court. You just earned yourself a prize. I got a couple Davis Cup pieces right here. You got yourself a prize. See me after. So now, the point being, it's very rare that some of those top players are making those adjustments. What Cahill did to center here, like these are very rare. Most people get up there with what they have and they don't make the changes. So we need to do a better job in the early letter development with the players. Abbreviated motion versus full motion, okay? So most certainly there's a lot of this that people are doing, and is it wrong? No. It's most certainly helpful, especially if you have players that don't have good throwing motions. But I just make them throw more. I just practice throwing more than I want them to go abbreviated, because when you go abbreviated and you make that the motion, what ends up happening is that they get used to having a pause. And the pause often has the toss dropping from a position that we'd like to contact it. So even though it helps their inward forearm rotation, and you typically get a better hit and some more improvement by making them go abbreviated, the long run of being smooth and being able to have the full motion, you're creating a pause that you're trying to get out of. So abbreviated is a great corrective tool, and everyone should use it. But I would prefer not to have Jay Berger servers. I would prefer to have people that have more fluid, full motions when they're actually playing. No disrespect to Jay, I just spent a week with him, but we talked about that. And I asked him at what point he went to that and why he did that, and it was an interesting story that he gave me. So, more, this young lady here, what's your name, young lady? Katya yesterday was talking to me about continental grip versus the forehand grip on the serving. And most certainly on the serving, they can just get it in this way, but the problem isn't the forehand grip on the serve. The problem is having an actual relationship where all the points of beginning start with a forehand grip for everything. Then the volley's like this, and then the forehand's like this, and then the back. They get so used to that home base with that knuckle on the forehand eastern position that nothing else feels good. That feels comfortable in home base, and they start building thousands of repetitions off of it. So yeah, would I prefer to go continental sooner? Yeah, I would. Obviously, if they're 3 years old, no. But if they're 7 years old and they're starting to show some prowess, yeah, I might even have them practice hitting the racket on the side, just like trying to see if they can hit the ball like that and give them a prize. Because right away, and obviously the kids can put their hand on the grip like this, and you draw things on their grip, and there's all these interesting things that you can do to kind of help them, guide them to it. But I feel that the earlier you move it over, the better. And you most certainly, within the continental grip, it doesn't mean that it has to be a perfectly choppy, slicey kind of thing. Continental has range, and you can actually still get some more of a power feel. It's not that the forehand grip is a power feel and the continental is just a horrible slice feel. You just need to get on the same side and get your hand on their hand to work on some wrist manipulation. The actual platform versus pinpoint, obviously you're getting closer to different ages and levels. I feel that the servers in the history of the game that have been pinpoint are the ones that have had the fastest and the biggest serves in the game. So Roddick, Shelton, Sam Groth, like whoever, Raonic, whoever you want to put in the Richard Krajicek, the ones that are the biggest serves, right? Most of them are actually pinpoint. But can I teach pinpoint to all students? No. I think that is a little bit more nuanced based on athleticism. If I have someone that is maybe, and I'm not poking fun, please understand. Todd Martin's a good friend of mine, just texted me the other day, but I'm going to use him because I played against him in juniors. He was kind of tall and a little bit more like, not that athletically coordinated till after he got to college at Northwestern. And so Todd would just kind of go platform with his body already coiled, and he would just kind of uncoil out of it because that made sense for him. He was not a TikTok dancer. He just wasn't. And so, you watch Kyrgios, and he's loose and wiggling, and he's here, and he's turning, and here, and he's going up for a basketball slam dunk as he's wearing his Celtic jersey because he thinks he's a hooper, right? So he's got a different level of athleticism he's bringing, right? Now, arguably two of the best servers in the history of the game are not pinpoint guys. So it's not to say that pinpoint's the holy grail, right? Because the two best servers in terms of holding serve in the history of tennis, Pete Sampras and Roger Federer, right? And those guys are both platform guys. But what was Federer's average serve speed? 124, right? He was at 132. Now, if you gave Federer a pinpoint and told him to bring a little bit more gas, we know Federer's coordination level would have taken it higher. It didn't matter. He had such a strong game to back it up. He just stayed there, right? Pete Sampras, obviously, here, long arms, and Pete Fisher did one heck of a job there. You could put a penny on the court, and Sampras could hit that at 129 all day long. But again, Sampras was serving 128 to 132. He wasn't serving 150. Okay, so understand that the pinpoint versus the platform, I've found that if you get an Isner, right, and it's not Isner's height, it's the actual momentum and the athleticism that goes in the pinpoint that pushes you up and in the court and forward, you can actually get some miles per hour and some lift and things that are a little bit better. So the coordination and the length of Sampras and Federer being so fast twitch, most certainly those guys could hit the spots and do whatever they wanted and were actually holding serve 91% of the time when they were playing. But if I had a choice with an athletic player, then I would choose pinpoint over it. But again, the other aspect about the platform versus the pinpoint is that if you go platform, where the expected impact point on the toss has to be adjusted and shifted backwards this way. So no matter what, like if you're going flat a little bit 1 o'clock in front and kick a little bit 12 overhead and 2, and whatever you're using as your frame of reference to describe it, most certainly with the platform, you actually have to, in that continuum, you have to move the impact point back a little bit because they're not athletically going this far forward. Yes, sir.
Quick question. What about someone who isn't quite athletic enough to do pinpoint, so you just have them stand like a Monfils with the feet together?
Use it all the time. But I use it as a corrective tool to help them. Most of the time when I'm working with players and they're all over the place, that is one of the places that I go to. So it's a great comment, it's a great tip.
Do you think that's better than the platform, though? Let's say they
I think if they cannot manage their body and their shoulder and the toss variables to simplify it, most certainly. And Roddick was kind of right there and just going up with the violence. So what Monfils is doing, I use it all the time. One of my best players had just graduated from Northwestern. She was ranked in college. She struggled a little bit, and as I made the shift on her from platform to pinpoint, I actually had her serve the entire summer like Monfils, and she got some of her best wins at national clay courts just kicking and serving. So prize for you as well. Great comment. Last couple of things in the early letters. The full length racket decision, going from the smaller, the 25s and 26s to 27s, those are very difficult decisions. And most of the time what happens, the parent moves them to the full racket too quick because somebody else at a tournament says, why is your kid playing with the baby racket and blah, 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 blah. You're a little kid, stop playing with. No. You keep that kid customized with the smaller racket as long as possible. They've got to graduate out of it with extension and racket head speed. Like they've got to be able to make that ball talk. You don't switch to something bigger and now they're dragging a wagon out there trying to hit strokes because now they got the big kid racket. Okay? So most certainly is very important, that decision. And also, why are all of these 11, 12-year-olds out here with full lucks in their rackets? What's going on here? Come on. Let's use some common sense here as pros. The parents obviously want to not spend as much money, so they don't want them to break the strings, but I tell them point blank, one of the best things ever for you is your child breaking strings between the ages of 11 and 13. If they're breaking strings, that means that they are actually starting to make the ball talk. They're starting to actually produce with power and spin and move the strings around and create friction. That money you're spending is good money and it's going to help you down the road. And you have to be strong enough in your convictions to be able to teach them that and not have them with full lucks and barbed wire in their racket at 10 or 11. Some little 11-year-old kid that can't crack an egg is out there with full RPM. It's too often and too common now. And so these early letter decisions and all these issues related to that are really pretty mundane now at all clubs. And I think you got to start having a look for that. Last couple here. The frequency on net appearances, that's a tough thing. How often should a little one come to the net? Well, I think that if I hit a high moon ball to the corner and the other kid goes back to the fence, see how that moon ball just went over the fence? I'm not kidding, I just went over the fence. If that kid's going back and they're like this, I'm coming and sneaking in and that's a heck of a net appearance. That makes sense for a 10-year-old, okay? The weakest serve, right, is the weakest shot that typically they see. So one of the best net appearances that I teach a young 12-year-old is to stand over here on the ad side, put their left foot in the alley, look mean. The other kid double faults half the time. And then the other half the time, they throw a lollipop that's right in the middle. They drive that ball inside out to that corner, and they come in and go that way. And now they're dominating the actual ad side points and not letting the other kid hold it. You're going to win a lot of matches with that. So net appearances most certainly can be taught. Am I having them just running in on anything? Suicide mission? No. It actually has to make some type of shot, court space, and challenging the opponent connection. Last two, yes, sir.
Just a question on that. Are you starting with that style of play? You're starting to teach those kids like the swing ball like earlier, when they're coming forward and playing?
You have to.
Than you would before?
You have to. You're teaching them both. They're having the regular volley and the swing volley because once we got to the year 2000 and Sharapova and Serena brought that swing volley in vogue, that was an unbelievable change to tennis. And look at where it is today, 25 years later. But that's Sharapova and Serena, who were not great traditional volleyers, but they were intimidated. They stood inside the court, they slammed it and they screamed it and then the girls were, and they, come on, right? And it just freaking them out. And now these girls are getting embarrassed. They're holding serve, and they're breaking serve left and right. And these other players, after they miss their first serve, they're just double faulting because they don't even want the embarrassment of the slam and the slam and then the kill down the throat. So most certainly that connection is very important, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the tournament frequency. What really becomes an actual official full-time tennis player? In my opinion, when the family says they want to be serious, they want to start chasing the dream and going after it, then how many tournaments they play. Obviously now in most sections there's a progression, right? You have to play a certain amount of red, yellow, green tournaments to get to the point where you can play a yellow, or you have to wait till you're 11. So you've got to go through the actual tournament progression early, get to the point where you're playing the actual yellow as soon as possible, because you want to matriculate them into sectional play and eventually national play if they're showing promise. So I always say, if you want to become a serious tennis player, 2 tournaments a month in the summer, 1 tournament a month in the school year. So the parent's not overwhelmed. 1 tournament a month in the school year is not too difficult to plan for. Around the family, around the bar mitzvah party, around the other sports, around the sisters' sport, whatever it is, they can get 1 tournament a month in. They can get 2 tournaments a month in the summer. That's 15. You start getting 15 tournaments regularly in a year, and now you're starting to actually get growth and game improvement and competitive understanding, and obviously, as I talked about in my pyramid, they're getting the match play. They're getting those playing experiences, and that's very important. It is part of the actual learning curve for the kids. So I consider that stuff there, what I would consider early letter things that I would be concerned about, working on, thinking about. But that ready position thing that I talk about, I'm insane about it. I taught a group of 4-year-olds, 4 to 6-year-olds, and every day when we went to the court, we had the racket in the non-dominant hand upward, and we just marched. Up, 2, 3, 4, up, 2. That's how we marched to the court. Already giving them non-dominant arm strength, racket uniformity, and what? This hand's not even on it. Eventually they can get this hand where it can be relaxed and what have you, but being able to have this, super important. Any other questions before I go to middle letters, any questions on that early letter discussion? Yes, sir.
I was just wondering just quickly about the serve. You were discussing the 10-point platform. Do you find despite their better athleticism, there's more pace? Do you find because there's more moving parts that sometimes more things go wrong with them?
Absolutely. That's why the athleticism part of it's important, but it also puts the pressure on how good of a coach you are. I do all kinds of things. I'm attacking it like you have no idea. And I'm also in a private lesson doing a full 10 minutes on every single hour on serving, full 10. But I might put them in serving jail. I have this thing called serving jail where I'm limiting the variables. I'm working on the relationship of the arms and taking a look, okay, in terms of the throwing. Some people are not going to be able to have a Pete Sampras degree of drag, right? They may be closer in terms of when the arms are working and releasing. If they both go up too quickly, then there's a pause. And if there's a pause, right, look at what's going on with Coco, right? Matt Daly gets her a grand slam, and she fires him. Daly felt that before US Open was not a good time to change the serve. Their team said, it's changing. So he got fired, even though he won a slam with her, right? He felt like that was something that they should do in November, not do in August before a slam. But Coco would get up there a little soon and then have a pause and then a little bit of an opening with the hip and then some toss variability, and so she would have some periods where some of the double faults would happen. Now, again, I know her just like yesterday. She played one of my students at the 18s Nationals in Memphis, Tennessee. My student was 16, Coco was 12. My student won that day, barely 4-4 in the back draw, but I went up to the dad and I said, hey, I think you got something here. But moving that quickly like she did, winning US Open Juniors at 13, turning pro at 14 and a half. So there's not a lot of time for these major structural changes to actually turn into something. And then when you're winning at that clip, it's actually a disadvantage, right? Martina Hingis had more of a Western grip on the forehand. She couldn't move it because she was so small. By the time she was 14, 15, she was already winning, right? Winning on the Pro Tour. And she was half the size of Lindsay Davenport and the Williams sisters, and so she would get overpowered. Her backhand was unbelievable, but the forehand wasn't, and so there was a little bit of a limit on Hingis when she was probably one of the most tactical geniuses of a woman that ever held a racket. She probably should have won more, right? But she didn't have enough game to back up her actual acuity mentally, right? Yes, Chuck?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. You mentioned the equipment, and you talked about 23, 25, 27-inch rackets for the kids, right? And when to go up and down. What about strings and gauge?
I love 17 early. I also love just regular soft, the softest synthetic that I can get and keep it there. I also like hybrid when they're 11, 12, 13 and breaking the actual cross string on the hybrid. And so I graduated, I take a look at their game, their strength, their size. I'm making it, so it's not about an age thing, it's about a size and racket head speed generation thing that's more important there. But most certainly, I'm getting underneath the hood on the strings early on, because the strings sometimes are more important even than the racket. But as it relates to the racket, typically when you go to a full-size racket, now you're starting to talk 10.3 ounces and up. And if it's 10.4, 10.5, and now it's a little heavy for them at that moment, and then maybe if the grip's a little big, and then all of a sudden the strings are full lux, they're not moving the racket and they're not feeling the ball. So the second serve's not developing, the volley's not developing, like things that really need to develop at that point are not developing. Oh.
Thanks, Mark. I was wondering if you could include some tips on the one-handed backhand as you go through the stages as well, like how you would develop that in a player.
Excellent question. Early letter development, I wouldn't. Obviously, there's that anomaly. There's that kid. There's that Gasquet, Tsitsipas, Federer kid that's bigger than normal and has hand-eye from playing other sports, and then you give it to them. And I most certainly have had success. I've had 10 amazing one-hand backhand players that I coached over the years, but right now I don't have one, and it would take a very rare guy. But I think that the three things that I would consider with the one-hand backhand would be, number one, how good of an actual unit turn, big shoulder movement they actually had. If they weren't able to really have a strong dominant move here so that they actually are building more momentum with the full body and not just the arm, that'd be very important. Size would be very important. And then hand-eye. How fast, are they a video game player? Are they a quick processor? Because going from semi-Western or Western to get all the way over with the knuckle over, if they don't have that like quick, flashy improv, chip one, rip, if they can't work through those types of schematics, they're going to be overwhelmed, because tennis is different now. 12-year-old, little cute little freckle-faced girl with pigtails that's 12 can hit 81 mile an hour forehand now. Everybody can bring it now. So that the time that people used to have back then, they don't have now. And most certainly the decision making off of it, Tsitsipas is got a lot of decisions that he has to deal with. And heck, Federer had a lot of challenge with Rafa when Rafa would elevate those balls, until Roger decided to A, get Ljubicic, B, get a bigger racket, C, take the ball earlier. So Federer was in that period in 03 to 08 where he just beat everybody doing everything and it just didn't matter. He could just do whatever and he could win. That was a luxury. And then Rafa was like, nah, bro, I'm going over here, I'm doing this, and now I'm going to start beating you, and I'm going to even beat you at Wemby, right? So Federer had to make some adjustments there because he was killing everybody, but he didn't have that strike zone variation that he was dealing with. And so most certainly how to move that knuckle, the manipulation, but really the big, strong shoulder move and the unit turn and the strength to be able to go through there. And I would also do crazy things like have them play ping pong. And like just because you need to try to get equivalent actions and motions that can actually accentuate the development. But I also love to be careful. I don't want, back to the ready position, there's a lot of kids that have one-hand backhand coaches, and I see these young kids with their fingers in the string bed. And I'm like, no. If you're 6'4" and you're hitting a one-hander, okay, your team or somebody, right? But having the one, I don't need it to be higher than that. That's just quite fine. But also, typically the people that have the one are like peacocks, right? They want to show everybody, look how cool I am. Like, like Wawrinka is probably maybe the best model that I like. But what I'm saying is that showboating, like peacock kind of attitude, it can sometimes haunt you because look at what happened to Team, right? Team gets the one slam because Zverev chokes. And then he gets hurt and he comes back. And then everybody gets the book on Team. They know that his confidence and his ego is built off of what shot? One hand what?
Backhand.
Which one though?
The down the line.
Backhand line. So now, high-level men's tennis, they are not letting you win with a backhand down the line on everybody. The book got out on him. He came off an injury and the market said, no more, bro. And then what happened? Was he relevant after that? No, he wasn't. So you got to be careful how you're customizing the game. But it's a great question, Albie, and thanks for being here. Yes?
Would you ever teach both the platform and the pinpoint serve, the platform to be used on the second serve to the same student?
Man, that's $1 million question. You're pretty bright. What's your name?
Andrea.
Okay. That's a heck of a suggestion. Love your thought process. The challenge with toss variability in the wind, and you would need a Martina Navratilova coordination level athlete with the ability to work the tosses to be able to do that, because there really is a distinguishable difference between where that toss is contacted between those two. The hip turn and the foot part, not that difficult to coordinate. The tosses matching, it's like a slot machine. You want 3 cherries: toss, body, swing. And the toss typically for most people is the most difficult thing to corral and be consistent all the time relative to what they're doing. So it's a great tip. It's a great corrective to actually do in a lesson. But to say that that's how they're going to play, it's a great question. On the top of my head, I can't name someone that played that way. But it's not to say that that's not necessarily a thought. And maybe you might be the next one to develop a player to do it. It's a great question, though. Prize for you, too. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an example of a tour pro that made a significant change to their serve in the middle of their career?
Sinner. Sinner was going with a close, he wasn't having the relationship of the arms where the tossing arm was leading, and he wasn't having a big drag. Cahill and those guys 18 months ago made some changes on him to give him a slice backhand, to give him a little bit more of an actual heavier inside-out forehand, to make his net game sharper, and they got him a little bit more drag on the serve, and now Sinner is a much better spot server with that actual drag.
And so because he's open to those type of changes and suggestions, his future is...
Yeah,
who
he's
knows what he will
unbelievable.
do, yeah.
But it's rare, though. Typically, people try to look at what Coco's going through. We'll see what she ends up doing with all of this change and flux and all the pressure that's on her, right? Immense amount of pressure, right? Beautiful young lady, great girl, love her and her family to death. She's making $47 million. She's killing it off the court. She's doing big, big numbers. And so once you start doing that, there's a lot of demands on your time, and there's a lot of pressure on you every week. So the middle letters, this is an interesting, I'm going to say letter M through R. The serve, the combination serves are very important. I like to use weird names like slat, like a slat, a serve that's flat and sliced together, like a slick, slice and kick together, right? So I try to play around with the words to try to get the players to understand that they don't have to hit an exclusive flat and try to go big like that, because 70% serve percentage in the 14s gets you 9 free points a match. So even if you serve like that, 70%, people miss 9 of those. It's crazy, but it's true. So you want, until they get to the point where they're competent and confident and they can move it around and all, you want to get the percentage up. So I love the combination serves, and I love to make a great, good, relaxed rhythm and consistency to build off of that. The return box, something I teach, is very important. So I want people to focus on returning deep up the middle right here all the time. That's where they start, and that's what the top pros do. They go deep up the middle, they neutralize, that's where they start. Then, as the match goes on, right, you might see them getting a little bit off of the center. You might see them crush it and get it even deeper back here to push the person back. And then when they really have the confidence and they really have a good understanding of where the ball is landing, they start pushing the returns to the outer boundaries of the court, but making the person play and getting into the point and seeing how people handle pressure and where their strengths and weaknesses are is your job in the returning. So I train everyone on that return box. It's a very important thing in middle letter development. Approach shot theory. It's not the old days. So I'm old school, I'm old. I hit with my first wood racket in 1978, and I played in college from 85 to 89. So I'm old. So I served and volleyed and came in a lot. There's not a lot of people that are digging out low forehand volleys, playing the line, covering position, getting back for overheads. You know, they need to have those skills, but the tennis now is a little bit different, okay? So what I want is, I want players to be all-court players, but they can be an eventual all-court player. They don't have to be an offensive all-court player. So they can come at some point behind whatever their best shot is. So if somebody has a great backhand, or they have a good serve, or they have a crafty slight, whatever that they're good at. But the number one job on approaching now is not so much that you try to tell them they have to hit everything down the line. One thing that's really important now is the shots that go through the sideline that get people stretched with a continental grip and they're floating, and now the ball's floating, and then they come in and they can make the volley out of the air. So the job of the approacher is to make the passing shot player uncomfortable. That's the key word, that's the buzzword. Uncomfortable is the word you have to think about in that instance. And I feel like that if you train them around their strengths, and also for those that are training, like I'm a Midwest indoor guy. So indoors, right, with no sun and no wind, I can really send them. I can cut them loose. And then all of a sudden, when you're outside, okay, whoa, what side am I on right now? Okay, the wind is pretty calm here. But let's just say the wind was at my back. If the wind was at my back, yeah, I'm good. If the wind was at my back and I don't have the sun in my eye, then I'm coming more. But on this side, sun in my eye, against the wind, okay, now I got to be pretty smart about when I'm going to actually come, because if I'm coming too quickly and drifting in there, now I'm dealing with elements, I'm having a difficult time making the overhead. So we got to really program them and train them on net appearances, but also talk about the eventual all-court game and structure it around what their strengths are, their serve plus ones, etc. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They're teaching the net in a generic way instead of a specific way. And to the comment back here that the gentleman made about the volleys, what you want to do with the volleys is, and this particular concept is not a Mark Bay concept. This is a stolen concept from Master Pro Bill Tim. So anybody knows Bill Tim, give him a shout out. Tell Bill that Coach Mark, showed respect and did a footnote. But Coach Bill, for those that don't know, he coached Brian Shelton's dad. So Brian Shelton's dad, who was top 50 in the world, was coached by Bill, and Bill obviously developed a lot of players, Ryan Lippman and many other players over the years. So Bill's belief is that there's 4 different ways that you have to train volleys, and I think in this middle letter development, it's important that you do it. So the first thing, I start every day at practice, always with reflex volleys. That's how we start every day, period, every day. Doesn't matter what age, doesn't matter, every day. Trying to build up those repetitions in that. So being able to deal with a reflex volley and a volley without time is super important. The second volley is typically the one that everybody trains. Normal split step, unit turn volley, like that volley is the one everybody teaches. But the comment that I made on my tips with Ramona the other day was that the problem that people do is they say, short punch out in front, short punch out in front, short punch out in front. Like they make people think that that's how volleying actually works. And that's bad coaching. So anybody that does that, shame on you. So the truth is, high-level volleying, they contact the ball, and the step happens just after, not simultaneously. Short punch. If you're starting to make players like that, they're gonna get tight and spaz and dump them into the net when the actual fast passing shots are coming at them, and they don't have a lot of time to think. So the normal traditional volley, again, very important that they're moving on an angle forward, but they also most certainly have relaxed hand here. They're not building tension in their hand. So the hand is relaxed, and how can the hand be relaxed? Easily, if this is what's controlling the top from the ready position in the early letters. Now I'm relaxed here, and I'm gonna squeeze. It's gonna be solid, but it's gonna be solid more at impact. I'm not gonna create so much tension that by the time the ball comes, I'm like a house of cards fumbling around. So the number 2 volley is the one that typically everybody trains. The number 3 in Bill's system is when you've got to deal with a passing shot and it's far away, and the idea is that you split step, you put your weight on your outside leg so you actually get a base, and then you lunge to try to cover, and as best you can, hold the line or go angular if you can. So if you're going for a passing shot and someone's really trying to stretch you, you don't want to go backwards, you don't want to go lateral if you can help it, but if you can get a wider base, you can cover a lot more room, and then that obviously factors in if you're playing dubs and they go line, and you can get out here and cover the line too. So that's the third one. And then the fourth one is, as you talked about, what to do after you've done something great back here, and now you're coming forward in time and in space. And I played baseball first. I was a baseball outfielder. I could track the ball, and I could see where it was going, and I could direct traffic and push the ball around. So reflex volley, traditional volley, stretch volley off a pass, and then the swing volleys and the actual traditional volleys from deeper in the court. That's how you train. If you train people to do all 4 of those, they can play. They're not going to be sort of, I think, fish out of water in certain parts of the court in certain situations. Yes, sir.
So with young players that you're introducing to team tennis or tournaments, maybe going back to early letter, can you share how much baseline consistency you're doing and maybe some of the razzle-dazzle things to get them more solid so that they can then building the point?
Very, very good. I'm going to come back to you at the end. Let me finish the letters and then I'll come back to it. But it's more than fair. And I think that there's a lot of ways to do it. But one of the most simple things I do every day when I just start rallying with a kid is I might put a ball down in that position, and when we first start rallying, they're aiming for that one. And right away, they're trying to get a feel and a sense of what that's like. And there's a lot of ways to create the tempo. Sometimes as a coach, it's better if you actually volley and make them mini tennis to you and actually talk them through rhythm. I think it's extremely important to do things like that. But yeah, most certainly I'll give you a couple of ideas. Another simple one, super simple. Explain to them that their racket is like, the racket head is like on floors in a building, and they're on the 4th floor, and then they got to drop down to 2, up to 3, and all the way to 5. 4, 2, 3, 5. 4, 2, 3, 5. It's a simple little thing, but they can get a frame of reference of how that works with their body when they're playing. The 6 stages of a match, way back when I was a young coach, I won a seminar contest on this where I divided a match into 6 stages, and we understood on the different parts of the match what the role was. And for those that are interested in that, I can maybe later on send an email to you or something like that. But it walked you through a tennis match from the beginning, warm up in first 3 games, to up a break, down a break in the first set, the first person to 5 and who wins the set. A whole stage in and of itself is stage 4, the first game of the second set. then somebody up a break and change, like in a closeout, a situation where there's like they're in the driver's seat, if you will, up a 7-3-0, 7-4-1, and then the last game, closeout games. So that was something that I created that now my students have a little bit of a model that they can work their way through matches with, and that's very beneficial. The double skills, it's like broccoli in my program. 15 minutes of doubles every day. Every day. Period. If it's a 90-minute class, then it's 10 minutes. If it's a 2-hour class, then it's 15. I don't do it at the end. Rarely do it in the beginning. It's often in the middle to create a bunch of energy and get them jacked. And they're already warm and they're already loose. So I don't kind of make it where doubles is the end. Oh, just go play some doubles. Oh, now we're just, being social, hanging out. No. I want the doubles to be intense, and today's game is this, and this is the focus, and there's going to be triumph and disaster and winners and losers and sprints and all kinds of chaos going on while they're playing. 2 more things in these middle letters. The fitness becomes a lot more important. So they should start going to like a little bit of a tennis fitness class. We have somebody that has a cheap tennis fitness class where they can go and they can actually start working on becoming regular with it as they get more serious and better. And if the parents have a little bit more means, then they can actually start having actual fitness. And you would say, oh gosh, do I want a 13-year-old going to fitness? Yeah, they don't have to pump weights at fitness. There's so many things that you can do to develop and make them better and work on things. Perfect example, all of them on a 2-hand backhand, this muscle here at the top of my shoulder and neck, as I'm making a unit turn and they get to this point, so often they go like that. They get tight and that elbow goes to the face, that shoulder goes to the face, to the chin, and now they don't have enough room to let the racket naturally drop and the non-dominant arm help make a backhand. So if I'm just doing like some normal bands and some normal fitness to kind of get the flexibility and strength in that area, right away it makes a difference. When the kids are wearing the little, gun shirts and tank tops and all that, I'm taking a look at their arms and their backs, and I'm looking at how the muscles are firing as they're making forehands and serves, because it most certainly has an impact. There's a strong correlation between technique and strength. You could be the best coach ever. If the body's not on the same page, then you're not going to get the result. And the actual, what I call the developmental wheel, is you have to play the tournaments. You have to come back from the tournaments with quality information about why you won and why you lost. And so the player has to call in to me, and the parent can send me an email separate from them. So I don't want the kid to regurgitate what the parent yelled at them in the car about. The kid's got to give me their own message, and the parent can give me their own message, and then I, at some point, can filter through those 2 things. But plan the tournaments with the feedback from the tournaments into the private lessons, then group lessons that are dynamic, that are at, above, and below the level. These families that only want their kid to be at the bottom and they can't be at the top of the class, not good. You need to train your players. They can be one of the top players in the class and work on things, because actually having more time against weaker players allows you to actually incorporate things. When you're always one of the weakest ones, things are moving so fast you can't actually assimilate information, particularly change new things. And then the last part of the developmental wheel is what I call non-paying practice. Getting in the gym on your own, going and hitting a bucket of serves. No more than 25 minutes though. Serving's like a pitch count. I got some crazy parents. I got kids serving for an hour. 25 minutes. Focused is a great amount of time to work on serving. Going out and hitting with a friend, playing a practice match, going hitting on the wall, all these things, non-paying practice. So the tournaments, quality private lessons, dynamic group lessons, and then obviously non-paying practice. That's to me the developmental wheel that allows those middle letters to become late letters. Yes, sir.
Underspin backhand?
Underspin backhand. It's a great question. What I am teaching and what's important, and I didn't mention in the early letters, was specialty shots. So thank you for reminding me. So in my system, if this is how I'm going to hit a backhand, then the actual slice backhand is not that difficult. I did an actual lecture on this, so if you go back in the tennis resources someplace, you might even be able to find this. It's called the complete 2-hand backhand, where I show how I do it. The challenge with the backhand is very simple. Once you get to here, and then you step, and then you turn, it's a left hand dominant, left side dominant swing as you produce and hit. And then as you go cross court, then everything sweeps around. But the actual slice is the one time where I can't draw a line between my two toes, and it's okay for this foot to go past that axis, and I can be on the side of things. And so there's only 2 times where it's okay to be sideways now. Getting ready for an overhead is very difficult for players now. There's so much open stance that people keep opening up on the overhead, and then on the actual slice backhand, people start wanting to go because they're doing all of the 2-hand backhand things. So early on, to integrate it and teach it is important because you want to actually get the diversification and also start training the repetition in the brain that a slice backhand is different than the 2. So it's a great comment, and apologies for not mentioning it. To me, slice backhand, drop shot, those are weapons. The moon ball's a weapon. The drop shot's also a weapon in 12 and unders. And that making a lowercase c and creating a little bit of a feel and getting them to have a sense of that, like that's huge. It makes a deal. So the chip, I don't like to look at Federer. He's high skilled and he's too good. He's going up by his headband and coming down with a very steep slope. You can't copy Federer. Don't copy Federer. Just get the slice backhand to not be higher than the shoulder, get the step to be just across, get the point of contact to be even with the front shoulder, get the hands to release where this hand looks like a glass of water in the back, and work them down the alley. So they're working in a very narrow target space, and you'll start getting it. You'll start making it happen. Yes, sir.
Hey, staying on that slice backhand, when you look at men's tennis, probably like numbers 1 to 5,000 can hit a slice backhand. But on the ladies' side, you don't see a ton of ladies with a slice back. And then you look at someone like Ash Barty, and then some of the ladies now have a backhand. Do you think why are guys not teaching a lot more ladies a slice backhand? And if it does happen, would that give a female player an edge to have a
Because the
good slice
backhand is important, and if you've been keeping up on current events, what did I tell you in the very beginning of this talk? What did I tell you in the very beginning? Tight top hand.
Got you.
They're coaching girls to not have the variety, not have the diversification, and with a tight top hand, I'm just focusing on producing, and I get an amazing backhand. How good is Coco's backhand? It's money.
Yeah.
So that's what's making the money now. So she's not going to go. She needed to have that slice early on. It needed to be diversified and built early, so it was part of her thing. Now, she's not worried about it. It's only if she's in a lot of trouble that she's going to do it. But yeah, most certainly, a little bit of variety and creativity goes a long way. And guess who was working on the slice backhand in December, in our off season?
Coco?
Sabalenka.
Oh, sorry.
Right? Because she's just gunning everything Mach 50, and they're telling her, hey, you got to be able to do something to get yourself back to neutral and keep a ball down and make people come back to your strengths. So now she's integrating it now, and she's lost some, right? She lost 2 Grand Slam finals and 1 semi to finally get one. But you know what? There's some learning there. Yeah. Some mental learning with attitude and game variety. Like she grew as a person, and so even though I'm not necessarily the biggest Sabalenka fan, I got major respect for what she went through and how she was able to get that done. There's been some amazing lessons in tennis. Sinner losing the match points in the French and then coming back and winning Wimbledon. We've had such great stories to tell to players to learn from about resilience and sticking with it and working on things and becoming better, that we got to use those as teachers as well. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on depth? Do you teach depth?
The thing about depth, which is very important, is that if you looked at Anisimovan's ball speed, she had the hardest backhand at the U.S. Open, harder than the men. Right? She had center beat by 1 mile an hour. Okay? So traditional, not to sound misogynistic or something, but traditionally the girls were hitting flatter and the guys were hitting heavier. Now obviously Sabalenka hits as heavy as it, so, but traditionally it was like depth was going to win if I was a girl, and as a guy, it was how much can I make the ball have action after the bounce. Nadal's ball, ridiculous to deal with, right? Kyrgios's ball, like these guys that can actually make the ball do things. So now, how do you combine it? This court doesn't have it because this is a pickleball combination tennis court, but what I love is the actual quick start line, the 60-foot line. I use the 60-foot line to do all kinds of depth because that's 60 feet, right? It's 69 feet from baseline to the quick start blue line. is 69 feet, and I'm doing a ton of drills where I'm activating how much more consistent they can get a ball in that area, because typically that opens up a lot of doors. But I like moving through the sideline. I want elevation off the bounce. I want movement through the sideline, and I want depth. I'm greedy. So one good drill that I do often, just a simple little drill, is that I'll hit with a kid, and I'll have the balls like this, and if he gets it inside the service box, he gets a point. If he gets it from the service line to the balls, he gets 2 points. If he gets it past the balls all the way back here, and then this 70 to 78 foot depth, then I'm giving him 3 points, and we're going to 50. And anything that goes into the net's -2. And now we're locking that in of how they can do that. The USGA does an exercise called not call the bounce, but an actual time drill where in 1 minute they see how many balls a kid can hit. And so 37 is like a record. 37 is like the line. Your kids can hit 37 balls in a minute straight ahead without missing. In 1 minute, they're hitting at a very good clip, right? Anything less than that, they're probably pushing, and more than that, they're lying. So it's only so much time. But it's a good exercise to see how well they can get a cadence of acceleration and hitting and go back and forth. But go back with your students and see if any of them can get to 37. It's very difficult in 1 minute. Yes?
At what point do you start teaching the kid to jump into the serve?
The athleticism is part of it. So the challenge with not jumping at all is that I'm not thinking about the most extension. So I'm not trying to intentionally have them being a long jumper to get as high as they can possibly get. But on the same note, if I'm looking at the toss and it's coming back down, if they're not on their way up to get it, I'm spending time about that, and I'm videoing that, and I'm showing them how much the ball's dropping and how much they're going up to get it. So I'm secretly talking about jumping without talking about jumping. I'm not coaching that they've got to jump, because that can create extra animation and overdoing it, which I don't necessarily need. But if things are dropping down on me and it's crashing down, the acceleration due to gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared, that kills overheads and serve tosses. And only 2 people in the history of tennis have been able to be very, very good with a super high toss. Super high. Steffi Graf, Yvonne Lendl. Those are the only 2. Like a really high. Like super high. Linda was like, Steffi Graf, both arms at the same time, both up, big pause. So you go back and look, those are high, right? But those 2 practiced so much and they were very good, and you didn't see a ton of double faulting from either one of them, which is impressive. But the last comments I want to make about the middle letters is that there are limiting factors that typically happen in the middle letters that then hurt the trajectory, and the kids start plateauing. They don't have the ability to become great. And so in that little area, their athleticism and their size can cause a limiting factor. The location of where they train and the weather, right? If I'm not playing outside, I'm not getting a feel for what is required there. The competitive cluster. You need to have competition. You need to have players around your level, people you're chasing, people that you hate to play, and you have to beat them, and you have to get through that funnel, through your section to get to net. You need that. People now are in an avoidance. They're afraid to play that uncomfortable opponent. They're hiding. Parents are looking on the actual website. Who signed up? Oh, Obi signed up? Oh, I don't want to play him. No, I'm not going to go over there. Turhan? No. Oh, no, wait a minute. Oh. Smookler, I can beat Smookler. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. Right. So it's way too much avoidance. The belief and confidence, and that comes a lot with self-talk and how people are trained and managed and coached. Right. The number one thing that I don't allow is for a child to say can't. I have 2 4-letter words that are bad words: C-A-N-T. and R-A-I-N. We don't ever use either of those 2 words in my academy. They're not allowed. Very important. But belief and confidence is important. Finances, if people don't have the dough. And there's been players that I've coached over the years where I had to go get grants at the local level, Midwest level, national level. In November, I run my own fundraiser where I generate 5 digits and I help families. So you got to get money to help people sometimes. And then the game influences from early letter coaching. If I get a kid at letter G, but the coaches that they had before were just trash and they did a horrible job, now I got to undo all that, and that's limiting. And sometimes I might not be able to get over that if the kid's already 15. But the parent still wants them to go play D1 at Duke, right? So yeah, it gets to be a little bit challenging there. But as you transition from the middle letters to the late letters, I think what ends up happening, at least from my experience, is that you start seeing fruits of your labor. You start seeing how some of this stuff starts coming together. You've built up this reputation. You've been working with the player for years. Now the people are on board. You're starting to have those great moments with them, and there's a lot of buy-in and a lot of trust. Right? I had a boy that only was working with me for a year, and he just won the Midwest sectional in June, and so now that mom's probably got her ears open. She's probably listening and doing what Coach Mark says, because she's seen now a year of her dedication, driving an hour back and forth to that club and going to the right tournaments and taking the lessons is now put her kid on a path, right? At 50 in the nation in the 12s, if he stays on it, he's going to have a good finish in tennis, right? So most certainly, I found that what I try to tell them is we're beginning with the end in mind. College is where we're trying to go. And at the end, we start talking late letters. College recruiting becomes an issue, and I most certainly am helping my players with the placing and getting into colleges and making sure they're getting into the tournaments where colleges can see them. I think there's player independence, and the players have to be able to go out there on their own and do things and reach out to you and let you know how they're doing. So you have to be able to start creating that umbilical cord cutting, because by the time they get to college or pros or something else, you may be staying at the club and they may be off playing on their own. The transition to the pro tour, very difficult. Playing the right tournaments, playing the points, starting to play the 15Ks and get your feet wet, playing qualies, future qualies, like all of that. You start going into that realm, it is difficult. I've got a young boy that just called me this morning. He's in the biggest college tournament in the fall called the All-American, and he qualified and he's doing well now. He's won 4 matches in a row, and I'm still talking to him like he's 11 or 12 years old, and we're going through the same kind of progressions that we always went through. But he was very happy to reach out to me and wake me up out of bed this morning and tell me that he won, because he's 5 hours ahead, and that's okay, because I understand while that exuberance is there, he wanted to share that moment, and most certainly he's been working hard to get to that point, and now he's starting to see some of the results, so that's good for him. And I think that I've had an incredibly fortunate circle of coaching. So I've had some of my students now go on to become great coaches. And obviously Colin Foster comes to name, who has spent a lot of time in college tennis and just recently was at Wichita State, and Georgia Rose, who was at the University of Washington and Northwestern. So I've had some of my own students go on and become very, very good coaches and win national coaching awards in their sphere of influence. So that's made me proud that I've been able to disseminate information and impact someone to the point where they would consider a career in the sport and give back and make other players great using some of the same philosophies and things. I still have a ton of Facebook messages and things that come in from students, and they talk about things, and that's really important. And that's touching to me at all times. I also feel that, as we mentioned in the bio in the beginning, this late letter development, when you really truly have a chance to look back on the journey, and again, I'm extremely lucky guy. Let's make that clear. One of the best mentor coaches, and then obviously I've had a lot of success, so I'm very blessed. But to me, if you have one kid win a district title, one kid win a state title, one kid win a local, like any kind of title, to me, that you built and worked with your student and you saw over time all these things that you worked with them and you got to that point, then you've done a special job and you've made history with that child. And that's really a big part of what we do in the junior space. It's not just providing hidden giggles in practice. Most certainly, some kids could say that they want to just make their high school team, and that's okay. That goal setting is fine. My particular goal setting is just different. So I work with them on that. So what do I have to do when I get back home? I have to make tournament schedules for 10 players. From October 1 until hard courts, which is the first week of August, I have to come up with 5 or 6 goals. And those goals are fused. They're developmental coaching technique types of things and tournament parameters and match counts and all these other things. And then I show them over the course of the year what they need to play. They follow the blueprint. And then at the end, next August, we see where we are. and how well we did. But I'm telling you, if anybody knows about how goals work, when you put things on paper, it's amazing how often those things happen. So you have to be willing to do these extras. And when I called in the outline a value-added service provider, I'm most certainly that, and I was trained to be that. Now, I'm not telling you that you should be giving away that expertise for free. We're professionals, and most certainly make it billable time, right? These schedules, I'm billing an hour and a half of private time, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna focus on each one of those, and I'm gonna give them my best effort and try to give that kid the best chance in next August to be at nationals or whatever, as close as they can come to that. So most certainly, we need as professionals to respect ourselves in our time. It's not like, well, I'm married, so I can't do anything. Well, you still could. And also, I have assistants right now. My program is running right now. I'm using Court Reserve, and I'm doing the numbers and the math and the money, and I'm giving the lesson plans over the text, and my students are doing that, and away we go. Right? So most certainly there's a method to the madness, if you will. And in terms of stories, late development stories, I'm just going to give you a couple because they're special. But there's a little 8-year-old girl from Australia named Alicia Bolton that started with me and just loved to battle me in a reflex volley game and never miss first. And to be at the U.S. Open watching her beat Marta Kostayuk as a 2 seed in the juniors, it was a special moment. And to watch her become an All-American at UCLA and be top 500 in the world, that was special, right? Thinking about a little guy, Dennis Navolo, moved from the East Coast. He was 9 years old. He was wild. He was just going for stuff. He was pretty irreverent, could barely control the guy, but he had good racket head speed. In 2.5 years, he became #1 in the nation, and he finished juniors with #1 in the nation in 3 different age divisions, was top 10, obviously, in all of the divisions, and ended up top 300 in the world and an All-American in Illinois and top 300 in the world. And I can remember just like yesterday, the very first evaluation, when I'm talking to the parents and he's ramming balls on the wall, and they told me this kid can't stop hitting balls on the wall. I said, that's gonna be good. He's gonna become a good player because of that. Another story, I had a player named Evan King, currently still on the pro tour right now, top 20 in the world in doubles. He never wanted to get out of bed. Never wanted to get out of bed and warm up early. Finally, I got him to get out of bed and warm up early in the 14s, and by the time he was in the 18s, he ended up winning the nationals, only losing his serve 7 times in nationals, and holding serve all the way through. And for those that know the story, obviously he's currently top 20 in the world, but he qualified at the US Open, beating Karina Busta, qualifying and then losing to Karina Busta in the first round, top 180 there with him, and went All-American at Michigan. And just like yesterday, I can remember him not wanting to get up out of bed, and I'm having to drag him out of bed just to get him to be focused, right? The young boy I mentioned earlier with the All-Americans, Nikita Philin, came in at 11, he had a forehand like this high, backhand this stiff, forehand this high. But he was a lefty, he was courageous, he loved the net, he wasn't afraid to come forward. And last year he quarterfinal Kalamazoo, he won the doubles, he got to play US Open first round, main draw. And obviously in a couple of years, he's going to go out and try to play on the tour. And I'll give you one more. For those that have been watching my videos with RSPA and all those tennis resources, if you remember the very first video I did, young lady by the name of Brianne Miner. She's 11 years old, African-American girl. Started with her at 9. But the videos that I did on tennis resources, they were called the All-Court Player, and she was the subject. She was 53 in the nation. We did these little videos, shot them in Houston. And she went through, she was the 3rd child in a 3-kid family, and they all got scholarships, but she went on to obviously be top 10 in the country, and then she went on to win NCAAs in 2017, final to doubles in 2019, but won NCAAs in 2017 and played Ons Jabeur at the US Open. And it just, I'm telling these stories, and it's not like in a bragging way, it's just, I started someplace, and then I do this stuff that I'm telling you, and I'm not blowing smoke, and then over time, with brick and mortar and effort and triumph and disaster, down the road, we get places, and even though those kids are very spectacular and special, how many Mark McAllisters that are lawyers that went to Penn State and Julia Schroeders that went to Dartmouth that got straight A's and just finished Michigan Med School have I done? How many of those successful humans have I created? So it's more than forehands and backhands we do in this job. You're developing people. So A to Z is not just the strokes in the game. It's a long haul, long-term vision of what we're doing. And a lot of these tennis decisions that we talked about are part and parcel of what you got to do to make it go. So at this point, I know people typically are coming to a Mark Bay talk and they want to see a game or a drill or some razzle dazzle, what time are we at?
We're at 1:30.
Look at me, give me a hand. I'm on time.
1:30
Give me a
on the
hand.
dot.
I don't normally beg for applause, but to get that thing right on the dime without a rehearsal run, you kidding me? That's impressive for myself. I didn't believe I did it. But yeah, I know that there's somebody out here at 2 o'clock, but just for the benefit of the group, if there's another question or two, or if anybody wants like a Bay Razzle Dazzle game drill or something, I'll show one real quick before they cart me out of here, because obviously I appreciate giving you whatever I can give you, but that was a heartfelt message on a developmental talk from A to Z, and I really stand on all that business that I shared with you, and I think that that's going to help you.
Thank you, Mark Bay.
Question here, young lady in turquoise.
Yeah. Do you have kids coming to you that want to do pickleball and tennis and pros and cons?
Excellent question. No one is coming to me asking me to do pickleball and tennis yet. It most certainly will probably happen. There are some skills in pickleball that definitely translate with the touch and the feel and the fast twitch and all of that. I don't like the kitchen because I played tennis in the era where closing the net was so important. So the kitchen, like hot potato, swing and try to kill somebody from back here and take it. Like, that's the part about pickleball that doesn't work for me. Eventually, I'm going to get a certification so I can run big events and make a couple bucks. But I think that there can be relating behaviors, but I don't think it helps the ground stroke game. I don't think it helps the serve. I don't think it's just a complete tennis benefit per se, but it's better than badminton, which I think is bad for tennis. Oh.
Hey, Mark. At our conference, you had a great anecdotal story about the classification of cheaters, which I think is good for helping players understand. Like, our players love it. They like comment about it. Could you please share that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I gave a talk in NorCal, a very, very fun talk. I enjoyed my time there. I talk in junior tennis is obviously in the dealing with adversity on my pyramid. We talk about types of cheaters, and there's 3 types. The first type is someone who's just blind. They just don't see very well. So they'll play an out ball for good. They'll play an in ball for out. So there's no rhyme or reason with the score, the timing of it. They just miss calls. The second type of player gives you the benefit of the doubt when the score is 1-all, but at 5-4, just out. And then the last type of cheater is just a horrible person that will steal and trip their grandmother down the stairs. And that type of kid, by any means necessary, needs to win. They're going to cheat. They're going to test it, even with the referee on the court. If the ref is standing here, then they're going to call the far sideline balls out to see if the ref is going to overrule them. They're just bad people. And so if I'm playing someone with a bad person reputation, I'm not going to be in the match going, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? No, I'm getting the cavalry before the match even starts, and there's going to be a ref standing there at the beginning so we can get this thing off to the right start in the initial part of the match. So, yeah, there's most certainly, unfortunately, junior tennis will transition. Right now, they're doing a great job on the technology. I'm a commentator in college tennis, and just so you know, in college tennis, they piloted it last February, and they were able to use the electronic line calling system in the college, the National Indoor Tournament at SMU, and 41% of the time the college players were right. The irony is, they also use it in junior nationals and they use it in the pros. 41% of the time the college kids were right, 32% of the time the pros were right the last time that they actually had human refs in the back, and only 24% of the time the juniors are right. Because juniors are shorter, they can't see the line from the other side, and they're just looking up at their parent who's yelling and screaming with angst because they're watching their kid, and they're actually hoping that the ball was in and it was out. So there's a lot more mistakes from juniors. So there's a lot more accusation of cheating that's actually not even accurate. But if Federer and Nadal are wrong, right, 68% of the time, then there's a lot of times where people are being accused of cheating and they're not even accurate. So hopefully all this technology becomes a normal thing. In a couple years, tennis will have that as a part of it, and we can eliminate a lot more of that cheating. The other thing I didn't mention that has become very successful for me in the last couple years, I started a little consulting project where I can go to different academies and spend time one-on-one with your academy, and you can have me for a whole day, 10 hours, work me from sun up to sundown, deal with your parents, work with your top juniors, look at your business model, run a practice, all these different types of things, take some of this expertise and see how I actually bring it to life in your buildings. So I do have information on that if anybody has that kind of interest, because that's something that I've been doing now for 2 years, and that's gone very well for the clubs that have had that as well. So that's another side. But anybody, is there a quick, before they pull me out of here, a question, a game, a drill, anything I can show? Yes, sir.
Actually, how often do you have your juniors use foam roller? Is it every day? Actually,
Foam rolling all the time. All the time. I have one at home and I don't use it enough. Shame on me. Yes, ma'am.
It was just about Sampras and Federer and why do you think they stayed with the split stand?
There's no reason for Sampras and Federer's game was so good. Sampras was serving and volleying, and to be honest, Sampras could have gotten in even faster. Pinpoint would get Sampras in faster, but his body type was so long. If you remember Sampras, the arms super long. So he's like this and like this, and a very long tossing arm, and then a long drag, and his racket was so heavy. Sampras's racket was almost 13 ounces. 12.7. He's with a small 85-inch head. Boom! Right? It's just different times. But those guys, again, could hit a dime on the court. And two of the best servers and the highest percentage, 91% of holding serve when they played. So you know what? If it ain't broke. But those guys are truly special, right? Federer, very high-level athlete. And Pete Fisher, the guy that taught Sampras that serve. The crazy thing about Sampras isn't the serve. The crazy thing about Sampras is I played in junior tournaments those years. He had the best two-hand backhand you ever seen that you never saw. The best. Amazing. His second year 16, he didn't play second year 16. He played 18s. He played up because he didn't want to lose and have the seeding pressure. And they switched him to a 1. And they told him if he didn't go to a 1, he wouldn't win Wimbledon. And he won all those Wimbledons. So whoever told him that, he really bought that coffee and they got it right for him. But I don't know, right? It'd be interesting to know history-wise if he hadn't switched what would have happened. But he had the best two-hand backhand you ever seen. So crazy.
Wow.
Yes.
So my students who are two-handed backhand players have trouble on that backhand one-handed slice knowing when to take that hand off. They're sometimes taking it off too prematurely.
Yes.
So do you have a tip for that?
Yeah, you have to help them. Stand up, come up, sit, come here. Hold the ball out with your right hand. Just hold it like that firm. So you have to make them feel the actual secure hip landing here. So they're stepping, and then as I'm feeling this, and as I'm starting to move my shoulder forward. So this one, this two, then the release comes third. 1, 2, 3, and then the glass of water at the end, with the impact pretty close to the side of my shoulder here. Not out here, because now I'm fishing. Now I'm hyperextended, and on volleys or anything, there's a lot of coaches that say, out in front, volley out in front. Horrible coaching, right? The volley is out in front, but it's just out in front on the first volley. On a finishing volley, it might be more with me moving through it, but there's a lot of coaches that say out in front, but hyperextended elbow, bad. Bad coaching. Thank you. Yes.
So Tiafoe's obviously had an amazing career, and his story is a wonderful story. Do you think that someone should have changed his serving motion? And if so, could you help him?
Great question. Very close friend of mine. Obviously,
He's from my area. So.
heartbreaking to watch him lose twice for our team, and for Taylor Fritz to be sick. First of all, Taylor beats Alcaraz and Zverev after working with us for a week. We clean him up, and now he goes and makes $450,000, and we can't get the win last week. You have no idea how much pain we're going through. But it's a very good question. It's very fair. But for those that don't know Francis's story, his dad was a janitor in the club. He slept in the club. He grabbed demo rackets off the shelf and just went out and hit balls on the ball machine. He watched kids have lessons. He tried to copy what he saw in lessons. And so he's a self-made tennis player. So you can't take the 100 kids that you work with and try to make them look like that because he's unique. And when he played the Challenger in Chicago, the Winnetka Challenger, I'm part of that management team before we lost the tournament, he lost first round. And Jose Higueras, who was the head of the coaching at that time, was trying to take him to the backcourts and change it. And Francis came to me and said, Mark, I can't get down with what he's telling me. I think I'm good. And I had a conversation with him, and that's in my notes that I didn't talk about. So you just rounded it out. The one thing I left off my outline, you just made me look bad. Okay, it's on the outline and I didn't cover it. But this is a great segue for that last comment. My comment in the outline is form versus function. You have to be careful being so scripted about how everything needs to be the same. The truth is, in my own coaching, I try to teach most backhands the same. I teach volleys and overheads all the same. Forehands and serves, platform, pinpoint, how they build the energy, maybe a little bit of an elbow lead to build energy and racket head speed, catch it. So serves and forehands are going to have more individuality. But yeah, his individuality, falling forward with no relaxation and super tight on the backhand, and then a whole bunch of this wrist action on the forehand under pressure. We saw as he's on the denouement of his career now, he's starting to get a little older, and now the Czech guys really brought it to him, and there was a lot of pressure. We saw how that broke down. So most certainly, he's a special guy, and he's done a lot for himself, his family, the community. He deserves an unbelievable round of applause, but there's definitely some holes that the top guys break, and so him making 2 Grand Slam semis is outstanding. Will he win a Grand Slam final 3 out of 5 against Sinner and Alcaraz, who are more efficient? The odds are against it. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that how often the juniors should play tournaments, like once a month, but what about the practice? How many hours a week they should practice?
Excellent question. He's asking about how many hours a week. I have a student right now, her parents are accountants, and they just count hours. She was with you for 27 hours last month, and they like start losing their mind about the hour count. Quality over quantity, but most certainly there's a law of diminishing returns. If you have too much, if you're out there playing 5 hours a day and it's like nobody's focused, and if you're only playing 3 days a week, 2 groups and 1 private, 5 hours, probably not enough. The truth is, when they're right around double-digit age, right? You want to be 4 times a week for sure. If you can get to that 5th day, it's great. As they get serious and they become a sectional level player, then you're definitely at 5 days a week. If they're a national player, you're at double-digit hours of combined tennis, fitness, match play. And again, some of the stuff can be off-court. Start getting paid for off-court too. Start doing mental training. Do a FaceTime call and get paid for an hour off the court. Start getting fancy with the way you make money, people. Let's open it up a little bit. But yeah, double-digit hours, because college tennis is a 20-hour responsibility to the school. So if you only play 9 and then you drop them off at college and they have to do 20, you haven't prepared them for that next step, and they're going to get hurt and injured, and they're not going to be prepared. But again, you're also dealing with: are you inside? Are you outside? And what's the budget? If the pocketbook is open and money's no object, then yeah. 4 days to be serious, 5 days to be sectional, 6 days and 1 day off to be national, double-digit hours, combined tennis, fitness, and match play and everything going on. But you have to look at your own window and not be over-scripted. It's not like this girl has got 13 hours and he's got 11. She's for sure going to be better. The 11 might be better if the quality is right there. And that's where my developmental wheel comment is more important than just the total hours.
We'll need to make this probably the last one.
Shades.
You have a 3-5 woman comes to you and says, Mark, I want to beat my girlfriend who beats me all the time. What would be the single most important shot you can share?
3-5 singles, 3-5 doubles. 3-5 singles, attacking return, drop shot, right? Like just being able to take the girl's second serve and not even let her get in there. And then a drop shot, like, because you're going to challenge the athleticism and she may not be able to get up there and then deal with what comes next. Like, those would be just nasty. But somebody else made a comment, and that wasn't a bad comment either. Yes, sir.
I just want to say, you made a comment about the volleys, footwork on the volley. I feel like that's one of probably the most undertaught things that we get like instruction on. And when you watch videos online and things, they talk about the step, and they never really say that it's a split, load, and thrust through the volley, with the karaoke, whatever you fall through the footwork. So I just want to say thank you for saying something about the focus on that.
Because moving through it is way more important. The reason why Sinner is so successful is that Sinner is hitting 90-mile-an-hour ground strokes there, and then 79-mile-an-hour put-away shots, right? But in junior tennis, what happens? 50-mile-an-hour push cross-court, try to kill the down the line at a higher speed, miss it just wide. And I'm the only guy in the nation. If somebody else is out here that does it, I'll be impressed. I'm the only dude in the nation that has the single sticks up every single practice on singles drills, take them down for doubles, put them back in for singles. They're always playing over the 3.5-foot net, so those down the line shots that we practice are actually tournament realistic. And that's a great, great, great tip. Go back home, buy some single sticks, and make sure that, because tournament kids are actually working on that. There's a lady in the back who's been raising her hand like Arnold Horseshack forever.
I haven't heard about touching on any social media and phone use for juniors, like the things like advice, incorporating, or because we mostly say put your phones away, no use of phones. Like, what's advice? Any advice?
You come out to practice, you have a box, and you put the box down, you let them have their normal water break. You make an example of a kid that keeps looking at the phone, and you say, hey, you need to put your phone in the phone box. And then everybody sees that that kid has to put their phone in the phone box, and then everybody stops going to the phone every changeover. But then if you want to use the social media, obviously a lot of coaches are putting their lesson content out there and on Instagram, and people can watch. And heck, I've sent out all kinds of like Snapchat videos, watch this person's footwork or something, and the kids are looking, and they open that up instantaneously. You could call or text a kid for 3 straight days and not hear from him. You could snap him, and in 12 seconds, thanks, KK coach, okay. So using that and using the technology to make connections with them is very important. It's just how you do it. But the phone box is simple and a great way to handle it. All right, everybody, they're going to kick me out of here. Thank you very much for coming. If anybody needs any of the information about the Academy visits, let me know. And for those that I owe a prize, come on up. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mark Bay. Thank everybody. Make sure you've scanned your code in the program and on your badge. You can do that from your phone, or you can do